Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for coming to my session. Today we are looking at how meaningful volunteering can lead to employability, in turn helping students to understand their achievements. Today we're going to look at how volunteering is good for employability, how to help students recognise what they've achieved, and how to help students elevate their impact, in turn elevating their employability. For me, volunteering is about the difference that we can make in the community and how we can help other people and how we can achieve things that wouldn't be able to be achieved otherwise. I'm not naive to ignore the fact that students do volunteer for employability, and I'm also not naive to not acknowledge the fact that volunteering has got me where I am today. So there is always a selfish silver lining to volunteering, but my view is as long as people are volunteering and doing a good job, then I don't mind what their underlying reasons are. So at the University of Bath, I work for the Students' Union, and we've got several different ways that you can volunteer, which might be quite common for a lot of yourselves. Previously, I've worked at Exeter and at Swansea, so I have a similar understanding that they work in similar ways. We've got our student-led volunteering groups. So we have a Bath Marrow, Bath Star, a Bath Boob team, Enactus, RAG, and our volunteer group V team. We've also got our brokerage service, which is our volunteering opportunities page, where we advertise external charity opportunities. The current picture probably doesn't do it justice because it's showing internal opportunities that I've been advertising just to get a bit of an extra bump to them so that people can see them. I tend to find if we're advertising leaders, it goes quite well on the hub because people look there for things like that. We also have peer mentors, peer support that comes into the peer support team. We've got committee members, reps, and similar things that you'll have at your universities. They don't particularly come under me, but at the same time, it's still volunteering that can help with employability, and the same methods that I'm going to talk about will apply to them. It's just not the group that I apply this training to. So how do we define meaningful volunteering? For me and at Bath, I like to see it as room to grow and to develop, an opportunity to take ownership and leadership. The role requires a level of skill or knowledge, and we also look at what the benefit of the role would be to students taking part. The reason that we do this is that we want to offer students something that they couldn't necessarily just find on their own, or it's something that is worth their time commitment. Students are quite time poor these days, and we want to make sure that what they're committing to is worth their commitment so that they don't come away thinking like they've not had a great experience. And I want to set them up to want to volunteer for the rest of their lives. For a lot of people, this is their first time volunteering, and I want to create that culture of volunteering for long after they leave Bath. We don't advertise every opportunity that we're sent, as we like to keep the page fresh. We also like to balance the quality versus quantity of the things that we're advertising. That we want to make sure that it's a good, solid opportunity that people are going to enjoy, because that is what, at the end of the day, that's what makes people come back time and time again. It's quite similar with jobs. If people don't like a particular job, they won't work there again, or they'll leave, and we're trying to do that with volunteering as well. I'm probably preaching to the choir here. We all probably have an understanding that volunteering is good for employability overall, whether it's employers looking for good interpretation skills, communication, people management, relationship building, team working, also skills such as ability to be self-critical, desire to improve, motivation, initiative, flexibility, and able to work within the ambiguity, as well as business, organization, and sector awareness. All these skills can be gained from volunteering, and for a lot of people, this is a great way to get those first steps into these skills, or to understand that they already have these skills and help them to develop and refine them. In 2020, LinkedIn identified that the top 5 soft skills people need are creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. all of these are things that jump out from the things that we advertise and that we work in on a daily basis. And it is definitely something that we should be shouting about to students, being like, look, you're not just making this amazing impact in the community, you're also growing and developing and becoming a better version of yourself, which will hopefully impact your future career, making you be more empathetic in the workplace, be more understanding, be more creative, persuasive, collaborative, adaptable, and emotionally intelligent. The one thing that I found working with students is they are amazing volunteers, but they are terrible about talking about what they've done and what they've achieved. Um, I have had many sessions where I've sat in front of students. I'm like, right, what have we achieved as leaders this year? And I've had very apprentice style answers such as, we've achieved communication. And I'm like, that's not even a word. Like, yes, it's a word in itself, but like that doesn't answer the question. It's like, and then it's trying to help them unpick what they have done, because I sometimes feel that they sell that it's short to themselves. I don't think they always understand the impact that they have made individually, and the fact that we regularly remind volunteers that they're amazing and that they're great, but actually we as staff have a responsibility to help them articulate this and to support them to do this better, because they've done such an amazing job at supporting the community. For me, this is what I see as I'm giving back to them to say thank you for all the time that they've put in. I want to help you recognize your achievements, and it's a free way of saying thank you to your students. So quite often at the end of the year, I'll put on a training session for my student leaders to say, look, let's convert what you've done into something that you can take with you to where you're going next, whether that's your next volunteering opportunity, whether that's a job application or a grad scheme. So the next few slides that I'm going to cover with you are actually the ones that I use with the students that I support, and completely feel free to directly lift these and use them yourselves. I've developed them with our careers department, so by no means are they completely my idea. It's just tweaked ideas that exist in the ether that I've reformatted to work for our situation. It all comes down to, you volunteered, so what? It's all about using that evidence on your application. Sometimes I do it quite a pokey and a sarcastic way, and I'm like, yeah, and I will kind of like get them to almost get a little bit frustrated and kind of be like, well, it means this, and then they get there and you're like, okay, cool, why didn't you just say that in the first place? It's getting them to realize what they have done. So the amount of times I'll see people say, well, I've helped at youth club. Yeah, and so what? Well, through being a volunteer, the youth club project leader, I've dealt with difficult situations. I'm like, again, cool, prove it. Like, so what? As a volunteer team leader at a youth club, I was entrusted with the safety of the children. When the parents left, I learned how to resolve conflict through mediation. I also needed to adapt a professional approach to troubleshooting by liaising frequently with and actively listening to the other team members. That is an answer that you can say in an interview. That is something you can talk about on your CV or in job applications. That is what sells what you have done. I feel a lot of times people will just list a list of those volunteering opportunities that they've had, and to an employer or to someone on an interview panel or someone that's doing the shortlisting, they may understand what that entails, but quite a lot of the time they won't understand what that entails. It comes back to saying I was club captain of my sports team, or I was society treasurer or president. It's breaking it down. What did you learn? How did you apply those skills? Or what of those skills are transferable to where you're going? And at the end of the day, that is what makes you be more employable. You don't list jobs as, well, I've worked here this date to this date. You put a description of what you've done and how you've done it. And I try and get across to students that actually their volunteering needs to be done in the same way and with the same amount of emphasis that you would a job. So I talk about using the evidence on your application. So it's all about, it doesn't actually matter where you put it. You can either do a separate voluntary work section, you can mix your experience with paid and with volunteering. It might go in relevant experience sections, possibility of responsibilities and interests. I think it all depends on the background of the student, what they have got. If you've only had one or two part-time jobs, you might want to integrate it. If you've had quite a good work portfolio, you might choose to use your first page for work and your second page for volunteering, it depends what the ratio is and what it looks like on the page. You want your CV to read quite chronological and quite organized. So I personally take the approach of I mix it up depending on what it is I'm applying for. If my volunteering is more relevant than my job experience, I will make sure that it's integrated. Whereas if it's something that complements rather than elevates what I've done, no, that's the wrong word, sorry. Whether it complements rather than is the main selling point, then I will make sure that my work takes the main focus, but I will still include it because it makes me stand out. So it all depends on what they're doing and what they're applying for. And again, I always write about it in the same way that you would as a job. Break it down, describe it. Some of this comes down to knowing what it is that you're applying for, what is the employer looking for, and it's how well do you know yourself, what skills and experiences that they can offer and what you can offer. Can you connect these 2 points together and then focus on the best layout format to do this? Like many of you, I'm a volunteering coordinator. So for me, my volunteering focused very heavily in my current CV because it was able to highlight that I knew both sides of the role, from the position of being a volunteer, being a leader, and then stepping up to being a staff member supporting it, saying that I could see the whole picture from a 360-degree view. So it was very much integrated, whereas I've applied for other roles in the past where my volunteering wasn't the focus. So I left it near the end, but still included. I connect the two back and forward, and in the job application itself, when you're normally writing like the cover letter and things like that, I will switch between using workplace examples and volunteering examples as if they're both identical, because I see them as equal value, and employers who have hired me in the past have also seen them as equal value. And that's something that we need to get across to students, that actually some of the difficult questions are really easy to answer with volunteering opportunities, and that you should use them if that's your better option. In interviews, volunteering will give you an example to answer competency questions, so keep these in mind. Also, values-based questions. Most organizations now will ask questions about their organizational values and how you can demonstrate them. Volunteering is a great way to demonstrate values, because volunteering in itself shows that you have a lot of different positive values and a high level of morality. So it's a great way to demonstrate that you fit into that company's ethos. It's a great way to answer based on experiences, difficult situations. Quite often volunteering gives you quite a few of those, especially if you're new to volunteering, especially if you're working with children or animals. Quite a lot of difficult situations come up quite regularly with problem-solving abilities. Volunteering stories may also help you answer, like, what have you learned about yourself? How have you grown? How have you applied things that you've learned? Or how have you taken up training opportunities? I've also found it's a great way to get the interviewer interested in you as an individual. I think most interviews I've ever been into, I've had people ask me more about my volunteering opportunities because they can see the passion that I talk about it with, and people want to hire people that they want to spend time with, that they want to talk to, that they want to find more out about. So it's a real good way to inspire curiosity in the interviewer. So it's all about talking about your experiences with the enthusiasm that you've gone into those opportunities with. I sometimes use this when I'm talking to students that might not necessarily be volunteering for the right reasons, about how the fact that if you're just doing it purely for the sake of developing your CV, that actually you're not going to get the same impact from it, because it's about throwing yourself into it. It's about developing yourself to do the volunteering better. It's about the excitement that you've got from doing the opportunities. Those are the skills that you take away from it, and you've got to participate to the full extent to be able to develop those skills. So that is something that I always try and get across to students, that if you just turn up and you're present but you're not actively involved, you're not going to develop the skills, and you're not going to be able to sell them in the way that you're hoping to on your CV, because employers will see through by not, you won't be able to talk about the skills, you won't be able to give those examples. So that's how I encourage students to be enthusiastic and motivated while volunteering, if they're not there for that reason. What the care model is a great way to demonstrate sorry, your skills, whether it's an interview or whether you're selling it on your CV. It's another way of looking at the so what model, developing a rich bank of skills by routinely completing care. This is something I encourage my volunteers to actually do regularly. It doesn't have to be something that you do just before an interview. It's something that actually you can kind of have a Rolodex of care so that you've got answers for different things or just different ways to remind yourself how great you've been. It's looking about what is the context of the situation, what is the action that you personally took, what are the results and the outcome, and what is the evaluation, what did you learn, what will you do differently in the future, sort of thing. I know quite a few grad schemes actually ask questions and they will mark based on care. And actually, I've unfortunately had to mark some students with some great volunteering opportunities quite low because they haven't developed their answers. They haven't spoken about either what action they personally took. They are very good at we did this, we did that, the group did this. Unfortunately, interviewers don't want to know what the group did. They want to know what you did, what was your impact, what was your mark that you left on the group, because that's how they see where you just sat around the table or were you actively participating. Did you take charge? Did you support the leader in a decision? It doesn't have to be that you stood up and you led the group. It's if you just put your hand up and said, I would like to do this element. It's you can lead on an element without leading on the whole project, sort of thing. It's were you responsible for ensuring that the kitchen at the youth group was tidy and you were adhering to food safety? Were you the one that ensured all the toilets stayed in working order at the youth group because the kids kept blocking them or pulling the chains off, which they do a lot for some stupid reason? What were the results like? Because you were there, like, how was there a benefit to that community? Was it that you were able to get an additional 50 trees planted? Was it that you collected 4 bags of rubbish a week for a year? It's breaking it down and it's kind of really bringing like the data out of what you've done. A lot of people kind of get scared away from that because they're quite qualitative in the way that they talk about volunteering, but actually chucking some stats and some data and be like, well, this is the difference that I made. Or it might be you turn around and it's like, well, actually, we didn't make the difference that we wanted. And that can be form part of your evaluation. When I was younger and I was volunteering at uni, organised a project to take refugee male swimming. We had a fantastic project that took refugee women swimming in an environment that met the requirements for them to be able to swim. So with female lifeguard, no public gaze. So I organised one for the men to be able to go as well, because they were saying that they would love to go swimming, but they found it quite challenging. They couldn't afford to. I organised a session. I didn't take into consideration the timing of year and did it in the middle of when they were fasting. So I had 3 people turn up because they were fasting, so they didn't want to go swimming because they didn't have the energy. So that didn't have the desired impact that I wanted, but I was able to learn and look at the situation about making sure that people actually can go to those sessions, in the sense of like, well, what things do I need to take into consideration culturally? I was like, oh, well, I don't have the same limitations that the women's group do. I should just be able to book a swim session. It's quite naive of myself to not actually think a bit wider and think that there may be issues that affect why the men can't do normal sessions as well. Note to self, do things out of the season when they're fasting. And I also learned that it moves around, so it's not the same week each year. So it's definitely something that I can take into a good, strong evaluation, even though that the results weren't there. And you can always turn around and say, actually, you didn't personally take action, but you might regret that. Or if you were in that situation again, this is the action that you would have taken. Like, you don't actually have to have solid results or solid action as long as you can kind of evaluate it. So this is my last slide, but it's a little bit of a longer slide just because I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing to help students elevate their volunteering. We've actually kind of probably got a bit of an option point here for you all as a group, actually. Do you want to talk about what you guys do to help students identify their employability? Or do you want to go into the next section, talk about how we've tried to elevate our volunteering opportunities, and then do one big discussion about elevation and employability? Or do you want to have a break, talk about employability, and then come back to elevation, and then a discussion about that? Can I have if everyone can use the emojis, I'm going to try and see as many faces as possible. Can we have maybe like thumbs up if you want to go into a discussion now, and clap if you want to do a discussion at the end after I've done all the slides. Okay, I've got clap, so I'm going to continue and we'll have one big discussion at the end. Does anyone strongly object to that? No, good. I've got one head shaking no at me. That's the only camera I can see. Thank you, Debbie. So I've talked about what we see as meaningful opportunities, and so we have some standard ones. I've put probably the most standard one right in the middle. We have student leaders, which I know a lot of you do have, especially if you've got student-led groups. We develop our student leaders to take ownership, take leadership, and kind of develop their own programs with our support. Point number 4 is, so we've got department challenges. So we've got a row talk, practice track, and a few others similar named, where we have students work as kind of like a consulting group with the charity, and these are led by their departments, but we support by sourcing the volunteering opportunities and giving them advice on pulling off charity events and fundraisers, so that they developing their skills as kind of consultants, going in, working with the charity with either a problem, a task, or a goal. And they've then got a couple of weeks to a month to solve that situation or deliver something based on the brief. And we've also got Gold and Lloyd scholarships, where they've got to deliver 50 or 100 hours respectively of volunteering to receive their scholarship payments. So that's as part of those schemes. They also have development conferences and opportunities, but that's something that we help with, but we don't deliver ourselves. Well, that's actually not true. We deliver the Lloyd's one in partnership with Lloyd's Bank. Gold scholarship is delivered by the university, but we provide the volunteer opportunities. The top 2 are the ones that I want to kind of talk about a little bit more, because I feel they're a little bit more unique to us, but I'm more than happy to talk about the others in the Q&A and discussion section in a little bit. But I'm going to work backwards, because I've decided that I like the list the other way around. Our social media development project is something that I've been looking at since I've started. So I've been at Bath now just over 2 years. I'm heading into my 3rd academic year. In my 1st academic year before the pandemic, we found a lot of organizations wanted help with social media, but they struggled to recruit students to do their social media. And if they did recruit a student, they didn't really stick, or they didn't have the skills that the charity were looking for. And it was just something that generally went unfilled and just didn't have the desired effect or response from the charity that they wanted. Last year, when the pandemic hit and we needed to take things more digitally, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of look at this as a bit of a project and wrap it together. And what we did was we recruited a group of students, gave them some social media training, and then matched them to charities and kind of set them up as a student group. So although they were matched to an individual charity that they ran the social media for, they could work together to collaborate and share ideas and motivate each other to work with the charities to deliver a good social media for those organizations. Unfortunately, it didn't quite have the desired effect that we wanted. The students weren't very good at communicating with us. Once they were matched with a charity, they kind of just stuck with their charity or wandered off. I think the main thing that I found, although we gave the students training, we didn't actually give the charities training. And I don't think quite a lot of the time they actually understood what they wanted. And they kind of wanted the student to come in and tell them what was needed, or they told the student what they thought they needed, but wasn't actually what they needed. And the student wasn't able to then deliver what they wanted, either because the goals weren't clear, what was asking was unreasonable, or they wanted a significantly high level skill of data analysis and a social media plan that probably needed the full-time social media manager and an entire department to do it. So this year we're re-looking at the project, and we're going to look at the training that we provide to students. We're going to look at how we introduce the charities to it, how we help the charities set goals and targets that are reasonable for the students, and also to give the students the confidence and the skills to help the charities to also understand what they want, rather than them being like, here's our social media account, make it amazing, which I think I would find quite terrifying as an adult who's been volunteering for over 15 years and thinks they're relatively okay at social media. I think I would be like, nope. So it is looking at how we help them to define what it is that they're looking for. I feel that when we nail this as a project, this would be a great skill for students going into the workplace, where a lot of workplaces now have social media. Well, pretty much every workplace has social media now, and only the bigger organizations have dedicated teams delivering it. So most people will have an element of social media as part of their role, and being able to go in and say, look, actually, I manage the social media for a charity is going to be a standout skill for people going into different industries. And the last project that I want to talk about is one that actually I'm kind of, it's probably the one that excites me the most. It's new to us this year, but I'm going to make the assumption that everyone here knows what a trustee is. And if you don't, I'm more than happy to talk about it in a minute in the discussion. But I've been working with our local third sector group, 3SG, and we're doing some research into the makeup of local charities in Bath, and have found that most trustee boards are older, white, male, either all one gender, or whether that's male, female, lacking in diversity, disabilities, different sexual orientation. So we're really looking at how do we shake up the trustee sector in our area and get more diverse individuals on our trustee boards, whether that's to help fill gaps that are being struggled to recruit, where we're looking at that you've got people that hold multiple trustee roles because there's no one else that wants to take these roles up. So people feel obligated to take multiple, which means they may not necessarily be doing it to the best of their ability because they're juggling too many opportunities. We are looking at how we can create kind of an inflow of new trustees for charities. And one of them is going to be the student project that I'm setting up, which is I want to spend a couple of months in term 2 training students on what is a trustee, how to be a trustee, like some of the skills that might be expected of them in the trustee role, whether that's looking at facilitation, social media, basic finances and things like that, and then working with some charities to offer a 1-year trustee placement. So that I'm hoping with about maybe 5 or 6 in the first year, and then place 5 or 6 students with a charity from, say, September to following September, where they're a trustee for that charity for a year. In the meantime, we're then training up the next cohort, so we'll have a constant cycle of new trustees coming into these charities, which is kind of part of well, if you can offer a role for a year instead of 3 years like you normally do, we'll provide someone that's fully trained, more diverse than you're used to working with, because they'll definitely be younger, hopefully from different backgrounds and things like that, so they're used to having on their trustee boards. So I'm really hoping that would then also inspire these young people to then take up trustee opportunities once they've left university, and to continue doing this into the future, and hopefully making a difference to local charities across the area, and, well, in turn wider once they graduate and move all over the country and all over the world. So that is the end of my slides. So that's 30 minutes or 35. So roughly what I thought I would. So thank you so much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my slides now, and everyone, if you want to put your cameras on, turn your mics on, and let's have a conversation and discussion and kind of see where we want to go. I can see people again now. Cool. So I appreciate I talked quite a lot there, but do we want to start with questions? Is there anything that people want to talk about how they do things, or either shout out, put them in the chat, kind of do what you want, really?
I've got a question for you, please, Josh.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot. Yes,
yeah.
It is
Okay,
Gilly.
cool. Sorry, I can't see. There you go. Yeah, I can see you now.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about how you're helping your students to develop their CVs, but I just wondered what your relationship was with your university, because from my perspective here at Bournemouth, we do feel we have like a careers advice service, and we don't want to be stepping on their toes if helping students with CVs and job applications in the future is part of their role. So I literally kind of wanted to know how far down the road do you go with CV writing, and do you liaise and collaborate with the university on that type of support for your students?
Yeah, so I co-wrote the training with our careers department, specifically focused on delivering it to our volunteers as part of Student Volunteer Week. So it was something that I sat down with the careers advisor and we wrote it together. We both drew on our experiences. It was the careers advisor who brought in the care model and the so what's. Completely, I didn't realize that I'd been using that sort of method for years, not realizing it was actually like a defined method. So it was really good to help them articulate like an actual step-by-step guide on how to do it, because I waffled on previously about like, well, I kind of do this and I kind of do that, and they were just like boom boom boom, here's the actual structure, and I'm like, oh cool, great, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm trying to say with a lot less words.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good
Sorry, I'm
good
losing my voice.
framework. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so generally we do encourage them to go to careers, but we know that not
Mhm.
everyone will access it. I kind of do it as almost like as a thank you to my student leaders, to say like, look, you've done a great job, let me help you. Because especially some of the better ones, like they won't necessarily think they need to go to careers for help, because they're like, oh well, I've done my volunteering, I've done this, I've done that. They kind of feel like they've ticked those boxes. So sometimes it's looking at making sure they're accessing the services without necessarily accessing the service. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something I'd recommend doing it in partnership, going to meet
Yeah.
your careers team and say, look, we're delivering the volunteering opportunity aspect. Can we collaborate on encouraging our volunteers to sell it in a more meaningful way, because we know they're really bad at selling their experiences?
Yeah.
Or whether it's saying, look, can we invite you in? Can you come and talk specifically to our dedicated volunteers? It might be that you just ask them to deliver. You say, look, if I get 50 volunteers in a room, will you talk to them? Or it's working out what works for your partnership. It might be that they just send you their slide deck, or depending on what resources that you've got based on the size of your institution, whether you're university, SU, external.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
That's okay. Has anyone else got any other questions?
I just have like a comment in terms of it's interesting with like the partnerships with volunteering departments and career departments as well, because we do so at UWL, volunteering is included with the career service. And we have developed a few things since 2018. So I've started to implement in curriculum with the lectures that would allow or would invite us a kind of gamification that we called SAS, which stands for Skills Analysis Sessions. And it's all based on games. And it's just almost to light up the idea that, oh, okay, so this is how volunteering actually relates with my course. But it's all done, so those sessions are specifically done by me in curriculum with certain courses. And then after the session, or at the end of the session, I say, right, guys, I am not an expert in CV writing, but do you know who is? An entire team of fantastic career consultants you have at UWL. And that's how we kind of partner up. And the careers consultants do the same if students have gone to a CV writing appointment, but they don't yet have a lot of things to put in there. So then they say, actually, let me signpost you to the volunteering team, because they can have a few suggestions of how you can have more stuff to include in here. And the only thing that we've developed last year actually as well, that we're currently doing with more focused on students with disabilities. So the same way that you've started to notice how students don't feel comfortable or don't know how to talk about their experience, we had the exact same thing at UWL, and that's why we start introducing the skills analysis sessions in curriculum. And now on top of that, what we realized is not only they don't, it's not just about the fact that they don't know how to talk about the skills or write about the skills, is that they don't have the confidence to actually say it, kind of thing. So we've developed a leadership program that has all of these different workshops on communication skills, leadership skills, and now it's connecting with one-off opportunities with the skills analysis sessions.
I mean, that sounds great. If you're willing to share, please do.
Yeah, I
I'd
mean,
love to see some of those.
it was a pilot program, the leadership thing. So we're going to start implementing it. We're going to implement it again this year, and we have some data for that. But I feel that it's just so interesting how, if we put our mind to it, the partnerships you can create that focus on these employability skills.
I'd be really interested in that, Mariana. I wondered if you could put together some sort of the trainer session together for our network that we could then possibly take away to our university, so a bit more in depth about, you know, what you do and how you can coordinate and you know, present that to your students would be very interesting if we could consider that for the future.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant.
Charlotte's commented saying that she's interested in how volunteering relates to your course aspect too. I know that's something that we spoke about in our last network meeting, and I know that Bath are going to be focusing on it a little bit more in the near future with our new member of volunteering staff starting, and that's going to be part of their focus. I can also see that John's had his hand up for a little bit now. So John, do you want to input?
Yeah, no, thanks for the presentation, Joshua. Just interested in sort of some of the practicalities of how you deliver it. So how often do you run the sessions? How many students turn up? And those students who don't turn up to the sessions, do you have other ways of getting the content to them?
Yeah, so, well, is that for the employability session more specifically than the well, we've run it as part of Student Volunteer Week, which was open to everyone. We've done that 2 years in a row. Attendance wasn't outstanding, but we had attendance, which is always a great start. What we did do is I have filmed it as a session, and term 1 last year, myself working with Georgina, Charlotte, the 2 Bristol universities and Bath Spa, we did a online series of kind of like a volunteer fair with, because we're so close, we have very similar charities with similar opportunities, so that we did a video series of different charities, and we put that video about employability out as part of that, and it had quite a high number of views on YouTube. So we do also kind of circulate it digitally as well. At the same time, I kind of see that our session is something that is meant to complement what careers do, so I'm not super precious about getting hundreds of students to my session, because actually if they're going to careers, that's fine. I just kind of do it as more as a complimentary, that if people want to do it, it's something to look forward to in Student Volunteer Week. And I then sit and run it with my project leaders, which I have about 15 project leaders, so I specifically do it with those 15. But actually I really drill into detail with them, and I will actually get them to like kind of answer the questions and the so what's there. So I would say, well, what have you achieved this year? And then I'd be like, so what? So I will do that individually with each of them in the room, sort of thing, and it will take about an hour and a half, and I will really pull the answers out of people. But that's kind of more of like a tailored approach that I do as a thank you to them. They might not necessarily feel it at the time while they're sat being like full inquisition, but they do benefit from it. Stephen, what would you like to add?
So I guess this is a more a general question, or an asking for a little bit of input from others. I run the Handy Helpers project at Queen's University, which is single volunteering opportunities for students, so they don't have to long-term commit. They kind of come out of a banking system. Mm-hmm. So we bank them, and then people come to us asking for volunteers, and we send them, and they can sign up for what they want. And what we are looking at is, or what we've been discussing, is a furthering of that to create some form of kind of leadership program, student-led program, volunteering mm-hmm. program that kind of comes out of it, that can do more long-term volunteering with projects. So we have, like, say, community groups who are looking for volunteers who will maybe stay on. They want to stay connected to the university, but it's not necessarily feasible for us to do that. I guess what I'm asking is to, you know, the skills that they take from us and take it on. We're trying to decide whether we should allow we should want student volunteers to run the project themselves, or if we should do it as a pilot project that we run, that they have leadership within. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do understand that. I've particularly wouldn't say I disagree with how I've been asked to run those projects in the past. Like my way of seeing, like my view is quite out there on it, so I'm going to share mine and also share the views that I've been told that I probably should work to as well. Personally, I feel it's better for us as staff to set the projects up, maintain that relationship with the charity, and then kind of put the student leader in place that can run the project. Mm-hmm. They can have that partnership with the leader, but ultimately, if they drop out and disappear from the face of the earth, I can instantly hand it over to another student, and that project doesn't fizzle and die. I personally see it that way because I feel that as staff, we've got the skills to set up a higher level project that has more impact in the community and has better development opportunities for the students. And we have the time and the times of year that we can set those projects up in line with the student year so that we can have them ready to go for October. The student can then spend 9 months that they're here developing as an individual, delivering a really good student-led project, rather than spending a year of their time trying to set something up within the skill set that they currently have, and then trying to deliver it probably at the off time of year and then really struggle to do it. So that's my opinion on it. I know that some institutions prefer to have it as the students set up their own projects and run their own stuff. I personally feel that adds too much stress and pressure to the students, and although they have some amazing ideas, that the time frame that at the university I don't always feel gives them enough time to actually work within that model. Yeah. I'm not saying it doesn't always. You do have some standout students that do well at that and set up some fantastic things, and I don't want to discourage it when they truly have the skills to do it, but I kind of like to see it as a bit of a balance. And actually, I know that I have the skill set and I've had the training to actually work with charities. Charities trust me to actually say, actually, we trust you with these service users, because I've built that relationship with them over a number of years, which the students wouldn't have time to in the time frames they're here, or by the time they get done, they're going into their third year, so they don't have the time to deliver the project to the best of their ability or what potential they could have had.
Yeah, I think it's because the varying levels, and it would be about them, the varying levels of kind of what they're doing. So when they're working with the charities and it's charity based in the more sort of established organizations, that's where we would take, you know, that main role. And that's not what we would be sort of asking those that leadership group to do. It's more, we have things like residents associations who have, you know, they're not formal bodies. They're much more, you know, they're just looking for little bits of support here and there. And it's kind of, how do we, and the idea would be that it's giving opportunity to volunteers who have shown that they have leadership skills to apply them in maybe not too formal a setting.
So that's what I tend to put on our opportunities page. So anything that's kind of led by the charity, I'll put on our ops page. And then I work with charities to develop opportunities for like student-led stuff. So we've got our tree planting project. So we work with More Trees Baines, and we've got a student leader. They recruit a pool. So the charity will say, look, we've got a project happening this weekend, only 10 volunteers. So they'll go to the pool of volunteers that go regularly. They'll sort 10 out. They'll give them the briefing, help them get there, help them reimburse their finances from the trip at the end of it, sort of thing. So that would be like the student-led element of it. Whereas we've also then got our like Christmas party at Twerton School, where we've got a student leader and their volunteers will organise and host a Christmas party at the school. They will turn up, do the party and go. That isn't something that the school would organise with the volunteers helping it. So they completely say, look, we give you free rein to deliver this party on this date for us. And that's what they lead on. Whereas if we had an organisation such as Age UK saying we're looking for befrienders, we would help them recruit from our pool and they would train and manage their own volunteers and deal with it themselves. So we've kind of got that balance of, we kind of assess the opportunity and where it best sits. The ones that tend to be student-led are ones that I've developed a relationship with over time, or we've already had that relationship with as a charity, and we've sat down and said, look, where can we really elevate our partnership? Where can we give a student leader the opportunity to be a leader and lead on an element of your work? So that kind of comes with time and trust and quite a bit of hard work in the summer holidays. Well, their summer holidays. Not that we get summer holidays.
No, we definitely don't. Thank you. That's literally what I was wanting to hear. I appreciate that.
Cool. I know we're coming up. We've got about 2-3 minutes left of the session, because I think we're due to stop at 12:30. But I can see Mariana had her hand up.
Yeah, it was just to add that we've struggled with that at UWL when I started. It was never an issue when I worked at Portsmouth SU in terms of getting students to come up with their own projects. And we would talk to the students. They would say which charities they'd be interested in working with. And we would actually sit down with them and guide them through the process of communicating with the charity, and we would ask if they wanted our support, if they wanted to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And that was at Portsmouth SU. At UWL, it was an interesting thing because we used to have a project leadership scheme. We used to have volunteer project leaders. And I realized that it was just not working. Like we were almost pushing students to try to get these roles, and all of
Yeah.
our staff time was being taken into pressuring people to do stuff they didn't want to do. And I don't know if anyone has ever gone through this situation as well. I got to a point where I was like, you know what, let me show you that students don't want to do this. So I still continue the entire project leadership scheme at the time. We delivered training, and at the end, the students would have to contact a charity, or we would support them in that relationship, and they would have to deliver a project. And every single student quit the project leadership just before they were supposed to deliver a project. So they went through risk assessment training, they went through project management training, they went to all of the training. As soon as it was supposed to deliver a project, they just left. And
So
I
was
was
that
like,
when they had to come up with their own project ideas, or when they were doing projects that already existed?
both.
Fair. So we tend to find the ones with existing projects work really well. I also find with the ones where they're trying to set their own projects up is they get really disheartened when they go to the charity, and the charity like, great project, we don't have time to do it, or we don't. And I don't feel it's fair on the charities that are already busy and already stretched. So that's something that I don't try and gatekeep, but I have charities come to me all the time being like, look, we've been approached by students, it's a fantastic idea, but they're not listening to us. They don't want to do it in the way that we want to do it, or they're not planning to do it safely. Like, how do we say no to them? And like, I can see how much work the students have put into it. It's kind of, I want to take out like another red tape and the faff time and get them straight to delivering. And it's like, look, you don't want to do all the paperwork and the admin. You just want to be like, look, this is the basics. This is how to do it. That's why we only have about 10, 15 projects, because we only need 10, 15 leaders. And then we have the brokerage system that gives them that opportunity. It's like, look, do you want to lead? Do you just want to volunteer? Do you just want to turn up, do as you're told, and get basic development from turning up regularly and doing some stuff? It is giving those, juggling those options. And that's why we don't have a massive portfolio of 100 projects that would need over 100 leaders sort of thing. It's a project leader training takes about a day. It's very quickly on how to do the risk assessment, how to do the evaluation, how to work with your partner, and how best to work with volunteers. Most projects are either an hour a week or 2 hours a month sort of thing. It's quite low commitment, but it's still quite high impact, and students can see that commitment. Last year with the pandemic, we only had one project leader drop out, and actually they dropped out before they even did the training. They were just like, actually, I got a part-time job, I don't want to do it anymore. And actually everyone else stuck with it. Same with the year before, like we had people stay on because it was manageable. They can see the difference they were making, and they had fun, they enjoyed it. So it's finding that balance. I know that's not necessarily how everyone chooses to work. I know that's not necessarily how I'm always told to work, but that is my take on it personally. And that's come from 8 years of being a student volunteer, several of those as a leader, and then 3 years working in the sector. Phil.
Hi there. Morning, still morning. I'm at Royal Holloway University. Just thought I'd share a bit about what we do with our student leaders. So we have 50 student leaders each year, of which I think we've got 48 recruited for this next year, and I think 12 of them are continuing. The continue ones are mentors for the new intake. And we have about 15, 16 projects as well, Josh, and a number that they all pretty much got started from students that 1 year or other. We don't necessarily aim to try and start projects each year, but if a student comes along with an idea and we can connect to them and support them, we'll do it. Luke, who's in the call, knows that he would rather not have new projects because it's more work. But if a student comes with it and it's a genuine thing that the community needs, and it's not just helping students, it's more about helping the community, then we'll support that. But in terms of our training, I guess the way that we work is we try and this may be true for others, we particularly see the big value in connecting the students relationally with us and relationally with volunteering team. And actually we're in a fortunate position now where we're just opening a new volunteering hub on site in the centre of campus, because the university has seen this happening and how students take a lead, and actually how we I guess take the risk with them to take that lead. The last year has been interesting, obviously, with the pandemic, because what we found was a majority of the projects had to approach the partners and charities to work out how are we going to work this year, how are we going to figure this out. That was quite tricky because all of them had to do it at the same time. It wasn't just rolling over from the previous years. Now, some of them have been great, successful, and some of them have hit brick walls, as you can imagine, but particularly those working with the elderly, we found, and those students really got discouraged. And we understood why the charities found it hard to put time into figuring this stuff out when there was a lot of other stuff going on. But that's something that then we were able to manage with those students. And I don't know, Marianne, I guess there's a different, you know, we have different students at different universities, but I just kind of was wondering where, in terms of dropout, whether there was something there at that stage of dropout that they needed that, I don't know, that extra connection support. I don't think our students are different to your students either. I think they also are quite, the confidence comes by the end of the year usually, and they usually figure out how they've grown and what they've gained at the end. And you know, it's been a bit of a journey for them. But also we put them in groups. There's always a group of 3 student leaders, so we have 2 project leaders per project to bounce off each other. And then also we have what we call a team leader who, and they have office hours and connect in with us and such like. And we try.
I personally found having more than one tends to be more of a nightmare, and that's when they tend to more fall apart, because they'll always assume the other will do it, and it's trying to get them all to meet up. I found actually having less leaders per project has been more effective. I've always assumed people are like, oh, we want to do it together, and I'm just like, oh no, I'm going to be told that I'm going to have to let them, but yeah, mine's always on a no moment.
It brings in the teamwork element. That's what we found.
I find that it does, like, I find the teamwork element comes from them working with the volunteers that they recruit, rather than specifically. Yeah, it always stresses me out. I always know that project's going to cause me the most grief throughout the year if there's more than one leader, because it's either that they're worried about committing to it, or I don't feel that. I think the only project that we have more than one leader for is our code club, because they've got multiple sessions, and our run project, just because they deliver 2 big running events and it's just 2 one-off sessions, so it's more of a committee led rather than a one person deliver. So that's one of the things that scare me, when it's just like, we're going to do this together, and I'm like, oh.
I think it's all like, I think it's can happen anyway, isn't it? In the sense that I've had one student that, and it kind of comes back, it relates a little bit with Fiona's session yesterday. I don't know if anyone was there, and the idea behind, you know, how to engage with youth and the aspects that she mentioned. I am a full believer that we should allow students to choose, because I think there's a lot to be said about the motivation factor in there. And I think if it comes from them, they are more likely to continue doing it. But I do understand that there is that bit between the relationship that we need to be aware of. The 2 students, what happened with me at UWL was the fact that I think there was a lot of the idea that if we have a project leadership program running, we need to keep it running, we need the hours, we need the students engaged. And sometimes it's just not the time. And sometimes you have to reevaluate your programs, and you have to say, actually, this year, we're not going to do it. And we're going to ask our students what they want, which is exactly what we did. And they wanted training. They wanted more training sessions. They wanted, like that, they wanted something outside of their course that was going to help them develop skills. So we implemented that training. And then after that, we then had a couple of students that did come to us, and they said, this is what I want to do. And one of them said, I want to do this in my daughter's school. I want to do a Christmas fair at my daughter's school. And she ran it all on her own, literally
amazing,
all on her own, but it came from her. But we had to reevaluate the program completely.
And I think it's good to evaluate stuff regularly. I think I spoke about it when I was looking at my programs. Like, they don't always work, and you do need to change things, and students are different every year. And it's like, I find the main way that I keep my volunteers motivated is, like, instead of necessarily, because it's not come from them, I'm very focused on like the output of what they're making a difference in the community is. And I think that's a really strong motivator as well, rather than necessarily just being their project. Thank you for everyone that's commenting about the trustee project. Once we actually have it up and running, like, I'm focusing on it in term 2, so it'll be this time next year, so please don't ask too many questions too soon, because I don't have much more yet. I've just done the basic research with the charity sector, and I've got like the outline, but I'll be recruiting from term 2. Once I've delivered my first cohort, then I will be happy to share. But yeah, I think it is about what works for everyone. I think I've been across 3 different universities now, and actually the student makeup was incredibly different at all 3, and what motivated them, whether they wanted to be leaders, not leaders, just turn up, was incredibly different across all 3. And I think it's doing what works for you and your students, your staff capacity, and not trying to directly mirror what someone else is doing, because if it doesn't work for your students, then don't force it. kind of go with the flow, go with what they want. At the end of the day, majority of us are student-led because we're SU-based. If we're university-based, I highly encourage you to be student-led because that's my preferred way of doing things, even if sometimes I don't always appear to be student-led. But no, thank you, everyone. I'm going to wrap it up now because I know that a lot of people want to shoot off to their next meetings. We have overrun a little bit. Feel free to contact me.